How did First Liberty Institute go from just being an idea some 30 years ago to becoming a thriving, highly effective law firm, one with multiple cases at the U.S. Supreme Court? We'll take you on that remarkable journey. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, along with our President, CEO, and Chief Counsel, Kelly Shackelford. Hi, Kelly.
Good to be here.
Hey, I want to spend a few minutes with you and ask you the questions that if anyone just had a chance to sit down with you for 10 minutes and talk to you, these are the questions I think most people would ask. You ready?
I hope.
All right, we're going to start with a real basic one. What is First Liberty Institute? What's it all about?
First Liberty is the largest legal organization in the country that all we do is religious freedom. So if you're, a fifth grader, I'm thinking of a guy in particular, and you're told you can bring any book you want to free reading time at school until you bring your Bible. And then you're told, well, you can't have religious books at school. What do? Well, you can't go out and hire a legal team. So we bring in the best litigators in the country who all donate their time so that when we stand with that young boy, Giovanni, we don't just win, which we did for him, but we set a precedent that protects all of our children and our grandchildren. So that's why we exist, is we can't allow the Constitution to basically be lost because people don't have representation when it comes to our first freedom of religious freedom.
This is a very specific kind of work that you're in. How did you get on this path? How did you end up here?
Very unusually. When I was a senior in high school, I realized my gifts were in analytical thinking and speaking. And so I thought, well, I either need to be a pastor or a lawyer. And the big joke was, well, that's kind of a God or Satan choice, isn't it, a pastor or a lawyer?
Yeah.
And I analyzed my own DNA and realized I would probably do better at dispensing justice rather than mercy. I'd probably make a better lawyer than a pastor. And went to law school, got out, clerked for a federal judge. You do that for 1 year. You sort of research, write opinions, and you get to see a very unique perspective. And as a result of getting to see what it's like on the other side of the bench, all the law firms want you to come work for them because that's a neat perspective to be able to bring to their law firm. And I had all those offers, and I just thought, Lord, I just don't feel like this is what you're calling me to do, to be a regular lawyer. And I remember sitting in my little clerk's office in the federal court building thinking, well, what do you want to do? And I thought, well, I want to use my legal skills because, God, I feel like you've shown me I should do that. I've done well, and you've shown me this is a gift. But I want to be in ministry. I want to help pastors and churches and religious freedoms and our founding principles. And I'd even like to go to seminary part-time. Yeah. And I laughed because there's no job like that at the time. And literally out of the blue, 2 weeks later, I get a call from 2 lawyers, partners in big law firms. Never met these guys. And they said, will you come to lunch? And I said, sure. And they said, look, we started donating our time for religious freedom, and we're now getting so many calls it's hurting our ability to make a living. They said, we were wondering, somebody told us about you, and we were wondering, would you be willing to come on, do legal cases, help pastors, churches, religious freedoms, and our founding principles, and you can even go to seminary part-time if you want to. Being, 25, a little immature in my faith, I said, let me pray about it, like that wasn't an answer to prayer.
Yeah.
And the next morning I realized, man, that was exactly what you prayed for. And so their only question was how much you need to live on, and these guys pitched in out of their pocket every month, and we started a nonprofit, and that was 30 years ago.
That's got to be quite a decision because on the one hand you've got the relative stability of working for an established law firm or set out on your own in a sense with a nonprofit where things are a little less secure. What's it like going through that decision?
It's a little crazy. My family was like, you did so well in law school, you're throwing it all away.
Yeah.
You could be making a lot of money. I think there's always a fear. Whenever God is telling you to do something and it's going to have impact, the enemy will always come at you to try to intimidate you. And you have to be willing to walk through that.
As U.S. citizens, we live this every day, and we have in our heads, I think, this sense of what's okay, what's not, what's in, what's out. We know that certain things aren't allowed in our culture anymore. What's your estimation from the perspective of the founders of this country of where we are today when it comes to religious freedom in America? Where are we?
Well, we've drifted away from the original religious freedom. I think a lot of people know in the 60s and the 70s there was a cultural explosion going on that was sort of everything that our country was about, really. They wanted to throw everything upside down.
Yeah.
And a lot of cases came down, were handed down during that time that really created some real damage to religious freedom, to both religion clauses. And we've been trying to sort of heal that really ever since. And so it's been bad, but yet I'm seeing it just right now. We're starting to really make a turn. We've had improvements, we've had victories, we've had things moving, but I see really a sea change, a real directional change. Part of this is because of judges. We're now actually focusing on getting judges on the court who actually believe that their job is what's called originalism, which means you don't go with what you feel like society wants now, you go with what those words say and what was actually passed. And when they do that and they look at the religion clauses, that means they go back to what the founders did. And so we're beginning to see in some of our major cases opportunities to really shift things that have been bad for 30 years and to overturn precedents, we're hopeful, that have been real problems to religious freedom in this country. So I'm very encouraged now. I feel like things are happening, beginning to happen, where we're literally changing history, and there are things that I didn't think were possible in my lifetime. People will be shocked by this, a lot of non-lawyers, but a lot of times when you're in the religious freedom space, you'll look at an opinion and they'll quote some old case. They'll never even cite the words of the Constitution. And so you're totally unhinged from the law you're supposed to be following. You know, the free exercise clause has been so damaged by these past decisions that you can almost not bring a free exercise claim. Most people bring free speech claims.
And by free exercise, the part that guarantees free exercise of religion.
Yeah. The idea that the founders would be appalled that you can't use this part of the Constitution, that the free exercise of religion is no longer protected, that you have to argue free speech and say it's religious speech. That's horrible, right? And it's been this way for decades because of these bad cases. I really believe we're seeing the court, that's about to change. And instead of going, what does the case say? They go, what does the Constitution say? Is that really faithful to what the words of the Constitution are? And that type of controversy happening, judges ready to really wanting to refocus on the Constitution in a proper interpretation, is really something that we haven't seen, and that I think will. Well, I said it this way, and I've said this a few times recently, and it might sound pretty strong, but I really believe it's true. Every American alive, in my opinion, is about to have more religious freedom than they've ever had in their life.
I sure hope that's true. If you were to pick one case that perfectly captures the essence of what it is you're about, what do you think of? What story do you tell?
It's probably the senior citizens case we had a number of years ago, where the senior citizens were told by the city council that they were not allowed to pray over their meals because it was a government building, and praying over their meals would violate separation of church and state. They were not allowed to sing gospel songs at the piano in the back for the same reason. And once a week, one of them was a retired minister, and they would sit at a table and talk about the Bible, and they couldn't do that. I saw it in the newspaper. That's how we saw it. I looked in the newspaper, and I saw a picture of something I never thought I would see before, which was senior citizens holding picket signs. That's not exactly the protester image we have, right?
No.
And so I put this down to our young attorney fresh out of the military, and I said, let's see if we can help these people. And he was peeling out of the parking lot before I could finish my statement, on the way to the senior center.
Yeah.
And he went there, and they said to him, look, we're the has-beens, we're the nobody. We don't have any power in this town. There's these 4 people in the city council that control everything. So we never thought anybody'd help us, much less lawyers for free.
Yeah.
So he comes back, this young attorney, and he says, okay, this city doesn't deserve to be warned. They should be destroyed. And I'm like, no. We're going to send them a letter, say there's this Constitution thing you really ought to read. Let's see if we can get this corrected.
And we can't call in an airstrike from a nonprofit. No. Yeah.
And they said they refused to respond. And in fact, they said in the newspaper, religion's not allowed in government buildings. So we held a press conference and had all the seniors there. And at the end, I said, media people would tell you never to do this, but I said, does anybody want to say anything? Well, at the end of the line is a senior by the name of Barney. Barney has a cowboy hat and a Western cowboy suit and boots. And he walks up to the microphone, and I have no idea what he's going to say. And he says, I fought World War II for these freedoms, and I ain't going into the corner to pray. If they want to arrest me, fine. Long as it says what I was arrested for praying. He turns around and walks in the back of the room.
You go, Barney.
Yeah, and that starts our whirlwind tour. We end up, on TV with Barney and the seniors. He ended up testifying in the United States Senate.
And in closing, I would like to say to each one of y'all, the Constitution guarantees each American the right for peaceful assembly. Now I'll ask you, what could be more peaceful than a bunch of old folks sitting around singing good old gospel songs that this country was founded on?
We ended up winning a permanent injunction that they could never interfere with the seniors again, praying over their meals, singing their gospel songs, meeting at the table. But what I really loved is the city was watching this, the people of the city. And these 4 all-powerful city council members had been beaten by the powerless seniors. And it's like a light bulb went off. And they went, you know what? We're not without power. And so they held a recall election, and they threw all 4 of those city council members out of office. Wow. And then about a year or 2 later, we got a postcard from one of the seniors because she wanted us to know that she was now one of the new city council members. And to me, that case says it all. There's a lot of people that are sitting back and they're thinking, I can't do anything. And the reality is, if they'll just stand up, they can take everything back they need to and get our country back to what it was for them. Because I think a lot of people's concern is that things are moving in a way where they're scared they're not going to be able to hand their children the same country and the same freedoms they had. And I think that's not true. And I think cases like that show that the people do have the power to change things.
I can imagine people thinking, I love what you do. I understand why it's important, but I'm not an attorney, so there's not much I can do. What would you say to them? What can they do to help with the work?
What's funny is that's probably the most, I can't tell you how many times during 30 years people say, man, I so love what you guys do. And then they say, I'm so behind you. And I always say, well, are you getting our information? And 90% of the time they're like, no. And I'm like thinking, I don't say this to them, but I'm thinking, well, then you can't pray for us. You can't tell other people what's going on. You can't financially support what's going on. And so they feel supportive, but without the connection, they can't be. And so what people can do is, number one, they can pray. I mean, these people are standing alone a lot of times that we're representing. And they're in tremendous spiritual battles that'll affect not only them, but you. And they need prayer cover. So number one, prayer. Number two, if we win and nobody knows we win, then what have we won? So if people were to connect with us by getting the emails every couple of weeks, or however they get the information from us, number one, they can see this person and go, gosh, I'm going to pray for Coach Kennedy, or I'm going to pray for Melissa Klein and Sweet Cakes and what she's going through and her case and what that means. But they can also go, look, Coach Kennedy just won. I'm going to take this and send this in my community so all the coaches know the freedoms they have. So you can embolden other people with the freedoms they already have but don't know that they have. And then obviously you can support financially, because the way we do what we do, we have a lot of people volunteering their time, but there has to be a staff and a base for all this to occur. And the reason we went from 47 cases to 447 is because we had more people get involved and support. And the result is we could handle more. So I would encourage people, you can do something. I look at it the other way. If you're a person who cares about this and you're not an attorney, the only way for you to do something is to connect to what we're doing so you can be a part.
Kelly, thank you for what you do. Thank you for 30 years of this, and here's to 30 more.
Well, amen. I hope so. I want to thank all the supporters for being a part of this and being along with this ride. And I hope they'll continue and continue to pray and tell other people and be involved. It's a privilege to be a part of what God is doing right now. It really is unusual and historic, and it's a lot of fun.
All right. And thank you for being part of this. Thank you for your interest in the work that we do here at First Liberty. We could not do it without you. Make sure you don't just have a faith, but you live it out.